so a lot more like
No, I'm sort of trying to make that shit. Just trying to see what happens to the story.
That train's probably saved to be like a 20-25% buffer.
What's the first
As I show when it's you.
were you MVP?
Yes.
Give it a
No.
couple more minutes and then I'm leaving. Because I'm responsible for video as well, so make sure it's captured in the room. So just make sure you see the picture of the show. I think I've set it up right, but
I can see you clearly. We got people in the room.
Pretty much B2B.
What brings you here?
Just launched a mobile app a month ago, so I'm just trying to figure out how about you?
Launched the website a few years ago, my first time. Quit my full-time job 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. So I'm awesome.
I left my full-time job like
Oh, really? Wow.
to board stuff.
That's a bold step. No, so you did it before you even had a product.
Yeah, I had nothing. I had to learn.
That's bold. That I find very bold. I was not.
Like, it was because when you have a job, it's hard to do stuff on the side. What you do? Targeted for small businesses that become purely enterprise. We only have enterprise
cool, if everyone's ready, should we get started?
That's my only sense.
But they're with
Great, well, thank you for coming. Session's really going to talk about, once you've got an MVP, what you do next, how you actually take it to market, how you develop a strategy that successfully enables you to take the product to market. Just a little bit about my background. I started life as a journalist 20 odd years ago, then got tempted to the dark side, and I've been doing PR for 15 years. I've worked predominantly with technology companies of all sizes. I've worked with IBM, I've also worked with 1 and 2 man companies as well, and everything in between. And I'm now based in Toronto. I've got a company that actually helps startups to develop PR and marketing strategies to take products and services to market. It's different to the traditional retainer model, so that's basically a little bit about me. How many people here have got MVPs currently that they're kind of either looking to take to market or in the process of taking to market? Perfect. So, do you want to just give me an idea of some of the challenges that you're coming up against? Because once you've got an MVP, the process of taking it to market is really, really simple, but it's really, really difficult to get the simple plan right. So I'd be interested just in some of your experiences of what you've tried, some of the things that you've come up against, some of the things that you want to hear today, and I can talk specifically to some of those things. Yeah.
Positioning and, as Vivek was saying, understanding your market.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect.
We sell to a niche, and I have no idea how to get in front of those people that would actually buy.
Okay. So,
Selling me as a product.
okay. Yep. For small businesses, that's effectively what you're selling to start with. So that's a good one. Perfect.
So the new platform has a tie into our existing platform and product portfolio. It's also, rather than being used by more internal users, it's going to be more externalized,
Okay.
which is different for us as a company.
You've got something that works with an existing product, so you want to differentiate the new product but still tie it into existing products you have in the market without alienating users of the existing products.
Yeah, fill the gap, but it's going to be, again, a different consumer
Yeah.
user of the solution.
It's keeping the consistency so that you don't look at it and say you're doing that now, or what about this? Okay, that's cool. Anything else?
Brand new product, competitors don't have it.
Okay.
They come up with pricing for it.
Okay. Perfect.
Challenge I'm experiencing right now is selling a vision for the product, getting people into the product for the greater vision, but since it is such an early stage, it hasn't achieved that vision yet, and it can only achieve, let's say, a percentage of the value that you hope it will at some point.
Perfect. So it's preparing for the future with something that isn't quite there yet, but has a potential to grow and develop. Okay, perfect. Well, that's kind of some of the common problems. So it's good to hear there's nothing that isn't something that a lot of companies face. One of the things that I struggle with looking at traditional approach to PR and marketing is that the whole thing is around awareness. It seems to be that now, and increasingly with social platforms, the more people that you speak to, the greater the chances are that your product will grow, will flourish, the brand will develop, and you'll have a successful product in your hands. When in reality, it's actually the flip. It's in the early stages when you've got an MVP, you've done a lot of customer research right at the start to enable you to come up with the specifics of the product and service. So you get the MVP, you've got to have something to work with. If you use the lean methodology, you'll have gone through validating hypotheses, you'll have looked at what customers want, what they don't want, combinations of things, what they're prepared to pay money for. And when you take it to market, when you're developing the communications plan to take it to market, when you're looking at pricing, a lot of it is similarly tied into that. It's an extension of the work that you already do to get to the point with the MVP. What traditionally happens though is that once you've done that initial research and you've got to the point where you have an MVP, people then turn and they stop asking questions, they stop talking to their audience, and they start to pitch it, and they pitch it to everyone. And they start to look at the product and say, well, I see this has a perceived value, and somebody mentioned that this is a feature that they wanted, and this is a problem that they're solving, without actually really understanding en masse what the problem is. That's amplified by the traditional approach where you take it to as many people as you can, and most PR companies will develop a media list, which is 50, 100, 150 people, try and pitch it to journalists. You try and pitch a product to 150 people that all have different interests, that all have different audiences, that all see different things in it. You may be an unestablished brand, so you have no heritage, no pedigree for them to latch onto. You're effectively pitching potentially 150 different plays on the product. And that doesn't work if you get pick-up in certain places, and they may not be the specific outlets for your target market. But then that builds, and people will look you up online and they'll see you've had coverage in a certain publication, on a certain website, somebody's written about you, they've picked one of those segments, one of the things that's most interesting to them. And you very quickly lose control of what it is that is the reason why the primary majority of the people that will buy your product will buy it for. It all goes back to the fact they haven't, most companies, most entrepreneurs haven't done the work, and they've not been able by PR and marketing agencies to actually look at who are the first people who are going to buy your product, who are the early adopters. And that's really where you need to start. You need to carry on the work you've been doing with the MVP to figure out what the feature function is. But you need to carry on those conversations to figure out how you position it. You need to use as much information from that small group of people that are going to be your target user group. If they're the people you're going after, you can't reasonably go after the whole world. You can't reasonably service if you've got a service-based business. It's harder with a product-based business. You've still got to scale up and manufacture it. And it's one of the big mistakes that people fall into is trying to appeal to everyone. They think that they've got to hit as many people as they can in the hope that they find 10 people that are prepared to pay money for it. Rather than actually identifying who those 10 people are likely to be, and maybe finding a slightly bigger group than 10 people, maybe going for a group of 50 that fit that really tight demographic that you were talking to when you were developing the MVP, and actually using them as a sounding board for developing the communications plan. What is the value? What are they prepared to pay for it? Would they be prepared to pay more or less if you did certain things to the product, if you changed it? If you positioned it in one way, would they be able to convince whoever signs off the check if they're not the person that makes the ultimate purchasing decision? If you positioned it in a certain way, would they pay more for the same functionality, or could they actually sell it to their bosses, the people that make the purchasing decision, for more if you positioned it in a certain way? And you use that information to develop the messaging, the value proposition, to look at how you communicate it to a certain group of small people, a small group of certain people with the same focus. And then if you have different markets for it, if you have different audiences for it, you have maybe 5 or 6 specific messages, but they're specific to each group, which means that every time you have that conversation, you're reinforcing all of the things that make them want to buy the product, all of the things that you're going to be able to help them solve, so that when they buy a product, they get what they expect. And that's a big thing with MVPs. You get companies developing marketing programs and messages around products, which actually, when they start using the product, doesn't stack up or is different, or the value they receive is different to the one that you've sold them on, which then creates problems, because if you're looking for a referral business to grow your business through word of mouth, they're telling a potential customer that their perceived value in your product is one thing, and then you're selling it on something else, and then it gets a bit confused. Well, is it actually what that customer is getting value on, or is it what you're saying, or have they misunderstood it, and does it really fit the requirement that they want? So I would say the first thing is to continue, as part of developing a go-to-market strategy, talking to your target audience, define it. Understand who the audience is, and if you have multiple audiences, group them into shared interest groups, so that you can develop specific messaging, specific value propositions, and routes to market for each of those groups, rather than just saying, well, I've got potentially 6 target groups, I'm just going to go and talk to everyone and hope that it kind of checks enough of their boxes to convince them that I have a product that they want to spend money for. So does that make sense? So once you've done the audience, once you've got the audience nailed down, the other thing is looking at the message. We talked about people trying to fit one message for a product often based on what their perception of the value of the product is. It's often not based on what the market value is, and that leads to people getting the pricing wrong. It leads to people leading on things that the target audience, people who would buy the product, really don't care about, which then alienates them and questions whether they will actually buy the product. Whereas if you talk to them, you get an understanding of if it's a procurement manager within an energy company, understanding what their specific requirement is for it. If it's a piece of consumer hardware, understanding if your audience is between 18 and 25, that audience may have one specific requirement for a piece of technology. But if they're a younger demographic, their parents are normally paying for it, so the perception of the value that they will want to see in the product, it might be quality, it might be longevity, it might be that it fits with products that are already owned within the household. You've got to make sure that you understand what the key messages are that you need to deliver to the person, not only the person buying it if it's a child, but also to the person that's actually validating that decision. And that same kind of relationship exists in large organisations for B2B sales as well as it does for consumer sales. It's often making 2 different claims to 2 different audiences in order to get that purchase decision right. So the message is really important, and again, it's one of these things where small businesses, startups, don't spend enough time on fine-tuning the message, or making sure that when the message is delivered, it speaks to all of the things that the audience needs to hear in order to choose you over a competitor, or to make the claim to their purchasing director or their boss that they absolutely need to spend this money on the product and service at that time. So that's one of the things that I would recommend, spending a huge amount of time talking to people, going backwards and forwards, playing with it, validating it, use some of the lean principles, have a message hypothesis, go out and test it with a market. You might find that it works with one set, it doesn't work with others. It might work at certain times with one group because there's something happening in the industry or happening in the market, and not at other times. So don't decide on what your message is and think that that's a stake in the ground, that it's always going to be that, it has to be that message for every market, and that it doesn't change. And it's a big mistake that people make, is thinking that once they've got a message, they're stuck on that message, and they have to kind of, then everything else changes to suit the message or the image that they want to try and create in order to sell the product. So the other thing I would say about messages as well is that try and make it as simple as you can. Make it as easy to understand. I always say use a five-year-old test of simplicity. I got asked the other day, how do you validate, whether it's simple enough to be understood by a 5-year-old? And I said, ask a 5-year-old. They may not necessarily understand enough, in order to make a decision, but they understand the basic premise. They will understand. They will tell you honestly whether they understand the basic platforms that your message is built on. But ask people that don't have expertise in your industry from a simplicity perspective, but also be mindful of people that are your target market, to make sure that you've communicated it in a way that actually makes sense to them, that they would buy into, or if they make a purchasing decision, then they're going to be able to justify to their bosses, to senior people in the company. So it's getting that message right and playing around and tweaking it. It takes time. You won't necessarily get it right first time. It ties in with what I was saying earlier on in terms of going out around small groups of people, going out to small markets. If you go out and make a big fanfare, which is what most companies do when they have a new product or service, they write a press release, they send it to the world, they post it on Facebook or they put it on Twitter or whatever it is, you've kind of told the world what it is. And it's very difficult at that point then to backtrack and say, well, actually, that wasn't what we meant when we said that. Because people that actually see that message, if they are your target market, you then try and say, well, actually, didn't really mean that. It was, a little bit more like this and a little bit less like that. It becomes harder to change it once you've made the big fanfare. Whereas if you're talking to small groups of people, you can get feedback, you can get input, you can actually then tweak it before you go out to the market en masse. If you're talking to 10, 20 people, it's easier to be able to fine tune it and tweak it. The other thing is that those 20 people, the small group of people at the start, will actually like the fact that you're asking them. They'll like the fact that you value their input enough to actually take into account what they want in terms of messaging for products. You'll find that sometimes that will bring loyalty, sometimes it's a cachet thing and they'll tell other people about it, and the other people that they talk to may be similar profession to them, even if they don't have a need for it now. But you start that word of mouth by giving the early adopter market some ownership. They're involved in helping you polish the product, in helping you to create something which they obviously see a perceived value in, otherwise they're not going to give you the time to help you with it. The other thing that once you've done that, once you've got the audience identified, you've played around with the message, you've got the message right for a certain audience, is timing. Everyone thinks that when you've got an MVP, that the minute you've finished the MVP and you're happy with it, that's the time to go to market. And I would say 99% of the time, it's completely wrong. The time to go to market is when your audience is ready. When you've identified an opportunity, and it might be that the opportunity exists, but certain things happening in the market of the people that you're hoping to buy your product or service is there. So be mindful of that. Look at what's going on, all the research that you're doing as part of validating the business idea, of developing the MVP, of looking at messaging and looking at what you need to be communicating, and give you a sense of the time